if I were to say extremely old Italian gun company starting with a B, you'd think Beretta, right? Of course you would. But that's not what we're looking at today. Thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum, and these are Bernardellis. If you have ever heard of Bernardelli, you're probably familiar with their little vest pocket sort of 25 and 32 and pocket-sized 380 pistols. You might be familiar with their P018 9mm locked breech service pistol from the 1980s. That's probably all you've ever heard of. Certainly not their 1956 and 57 pattern Blowback 9mm Parabellum pistols. Now, Bernardelli is actually one of the oldest gun companies in the world, or was until it went defunct. They date back to, as the longest date back that I've found for them was 1631, which is getting close to Beretta territory. And they're in that same little valley, Gardone Valtrompia, in Italy. Unfortunately, they never really had the impact that Beretta did, and they certainly didn't have the longevity. Ultimately, they went out of business in 1997. They went broke, and all of their assets were sold to Sarsılmaz, a Turkish gun company that continues to produce some of their shotguns. Needless to say, they don't make parts for these pistols anymore. So, what do we actually have here? We have 4 of the approximately 85 produced Bernardelli 9mm pistols. As I said, these were made in 1956 and 57, and this was an attempt by Bernardelli to get into the sort of the military 9mm service pistol market. But they wanted to do it as inexpensively as possible, and there were some Blowback 9mm pistols around at that time. Of course, Astra had the Model 400 and the Model 600, straight Blowback 9mm, that were, at this time, after World War II, they were actually in use with the Spanish military and the Spanish police, as well as the German security services were still using Astra 600s, or they called them Pistol 43s. There was some other experiments going on. Colt in the late 1940s actually experimented with a straight Blowback 9mm commander-style pistol. In France, you had MAB making the Model R, which was a straight Blowback 9mm. So this was maybe a possibility. Now, none of these guns, none of the straight Blowback 9mm would ever do as well as the Astra 600 series and 400, but a bunch of people tried. So the advantage here for Bernardelli was they were able, or they thought they would be able to take their little pocket pistols and just scale them up to 9mm Parabellum. So these share basically all of the features and layout and styling of those little 32s. So as you can see, we actually have 4 versions here. We have 2 that are hammer-fired and 2 that are striker-fired because Bernardelli just tried both. Throw them both up and see what sticks to the wall. So let's take a look at what these are and how they work and how they're different from each other. So of the original production, we can split them into approximately 2 groups, the first half and the second half. And in the first half, you will find 2 different patterns of hammer-fired guns and 1 pattern of striker-fired guns. They were trying both. Then in the second half of the production, so after about number 40, the hammer-fired guns go away. You will see the striker-fired guns, and they will start to evolve. Well, there's only a slight change to the grip pattern towards what would ultimately be basically the production version of the gun. So we'll touch on this in a minute. Let's take a look at the hammer-fired ones first. In general here, we have, like I said, a scaled-up Bernardelli 32 or 380 hammer-fired. In general here, we have, well, basically just literally a scaled-up Bernardelli pocket pistol. We have a heel magazine release there with a magazine that looks like it comes out of a Benelli or a Beretta. There is a magazine safety built into all of these guns, so you can't drop the hammer if you don't have the magazine in place. If we take a look at our slide legend, we have Bernardelli, Gardone Valtrompia, Italy, caliber 9L, made in Italy, and obviously hand engraved there. That 9L is interesting. That is actually standing for 9 Lungo. This is also known as the 9mm M38 cartridge, and it is basically a high-velocity hot 9mm loading developed in Italy, well, in 1938, for the Beretta 38 submachine guns. And, well, it was about 5 to 10% higher velocity than standard 9mm Parabellum, and as such, think of it as like 9mm plus P. Does have the capacity to damage standard 9mm pistols. So it seems like a really wise idea that Bernardelli actually designed these guns, despite being simple blowback, designed them for the hot 9mm cartridge to make sure that no one was going to end up with a slide in their face. Now, the two different patterns of hammer-fired guns differ in a number of features. You can see the profile of the hammers is a little bit different. By the way, I should point out, these are guns number 23 and 24. I cannot tell you why this is 024 and this is just 23, but these guns are literally one serial number apart, and they show these differences. This guy has a takedown lever here on the left, where this one has a takedown lever slightly different in style on the right. The safety levers work the same, but are shaped a bit differently. You can also see at the back of the slide here a difference in the frame rails, how exactly they're put together. And of course the grips are different. So they both have thumb rests, but this is the sort of the more production professional looking one with some checkering, a better designed thumb rest. Its reverse side is just plain checkering, where this one has another thumb rest on it. So this is the sort of thing, if you saw just this grip on one gun, you might think that it's someone's handmade aftermarket sort of thing, but no, that's standard. It's on this one as well, and I've seen at least one other Bernardelli 9mm with these grips. So that is factory. So here is the actual, well, a reproduction, a photocopy of the Bernardelli catalog page on these pistols. You can see that that had the checkered pattern of grips, and then they've got a little bit of a description and some statistics on it, all written in Italian. And you can see caliber 9 Lungo. Now, to take this apart, we will first remove the magazine. And then I'm going to cock the hammer. The way you do this, I'm actually cheating. I've already taken this apart and removed the mainspring because it has a tendency to bite. What you do is push this button down, and then you pull the slide back to right about here. There's it right there. And then you can slide the slide up and off. The mainspring lives right here around the barrel when you haven't already removed it to simplify the process. So it's actually supposed to look like that, mainspring compressed in here. These are fixed barrel pistols, of course. The way this disassembly actually works is that you have this lug and this lug, which engage in rails cut in the side of the inside of the slide there. You can see there's a little notch for sliding that one off of the left side, and that button allows you to retract this into the side of the frame, thus allowing you to pull the slide up and off. That's really all there is to it. This is your disconnector to reset the trigger mechanism, and also prevents the gun from firing out a battery, so that's handy. The one other neat feature in here are these two things in the front of the frame. Those are buffer springs to help absorb the impact of the slide when it finishes cycling. That's definitely an important part of how these are able to be chambered for not just Parabellum, but actually that 9mm Lungo high velocity ammunition as well. Now the striker fired guns are basically identical. There's just the difference in the grips and a slight difference in the slide legend. So of these two, we have serial number 11 here, very early. These are in one continuous serial number range, and so you can see that they were designing both striker and hammer-fired guns right from the very beginning. What is perhaps most curious about this is that they didn't go for hammer-fired and shrouded hammer. They actually did a hammer-fired and a striker-fired. Why exactly, I'm not sure. It's hard to come up with any advantage that the striker would have over a shrouded hammer, especially if you already have the shrouded hammer design done. But clearly they thought someone might actually prefer the striker, so that's what they went with. Now this gun is number 76. It's one of the very last ones, and it has an updated slide legend. So on this guy we have basically the same information, except down here, instead of just Cal 9L, this one is actually Cal 9 Lungo and Parabellum. And they've added brevet here, which is patented. So this is, think of this as like the actual very first of the production series, where all of the others are a bunch of pre-production guns that aren't quite ready for mass market. This would have been, this is what the gun would have looked like had you actually purchased one from Bernardelli. They did actually list this in their catalog, but only for like 1 year. And then failing to get any orders, they dropped it. Our safety here is pretty similar, so you push that up to engage the safety, drop it down, you see the red dot, the gun can fire. We have a different disassembly system for the striker-fired guns, and it's actually kind of clever. So what we're going to do is push this spring-loaded button in, and that unlocks the rear end of the striker, this locking piece. There are no slide rails on this. Instead, it's this guy, which, because of its sort of keyhole shape here, locks the frame down onto the slide. So when I do this, I push that button in and then push the slide back, and I'm going to actually pop that out. I should take the magazine out here first, sorry. There we go. So we push that back. There we go. That has now unlocked this key piece, and then I can slide this up, and there we go. And then it comes off the front of the slide if it wants to. Come on, there we go. So, got our spring stuck there in the front. So slide, recoil spring. We still have a fixed barrel. This is very similar to the hammer-fired gun, except it's got this guy. So once this is out, I can push the spring in, slide that back into place there, or I can actually, once it's all the way in, I can take this out, and then this guy comes all the way out. And this is just a locking piece at the back. The striker itself is up here inside the slide. So we can let all three of those pieces out. So you've got guide rod, striker spring, and actual firing pin. Those all come apart. And then that angle right there engages with this guy right here. And I have to put the magazine in order to show you the firing system because it's got a magazine safety. When you pull the trigger, that drops down, allows the gun to fire, and then this resets it. So this is, again, your out of battery safety and disconnector, semi-auto disconnector, so the gun doesn't empty the whole magazine at one trigger pull. You'll note we have those same two buffer springs, heavy-duty buffer springs at the front of the slide. So why did these fail to take off? Well, the recoil from a Blowback 9mm is typically fairly harsh, and then also, you know, these aren't going to do all that well in the American market with this heel magazine release. The sights on these things are atrocious. We have a little tiny front sight there, and an equally tiny rear sight. If I try to actually take a sight picture with this thing, and that's good luck. And while the production, the machining, the finishing is really actually quite good on these, the design has some clever elements to it, you know what, it's a sow's ear, and you're not going to be able to turn it into a military contract service pistol, unfortunately for Bernardelli. Ultimately, of course, none of these pistols would stick to the wall, so to speak. Approximately 85 of them were made. The factory, I have a piece of factory correspondence from the 70s that said they made about 80, and I've been told reliably of at least number 83 being documented. So less than 100 made, more than 80. And obviously none of them saw any substantial sales. So after this initial production run of prototypes, Bernardelli dropped this. It wasn't going to work. You know, if it had, it would have been a great way for them to make a 9mm without a whole lot of extra engineering expense. But clearly, the world didn't want Blowback 9mm. They wanted locked breech pistols. So 30 years later, 25 years later, Bernardelli would come back into this market with the P018, which if we haven't done a video on by the time you see this, we will be doing one. So keep an eye out for that. The P018 was also actually a really pretty nice gun, but just didn't offer anything novel and failed to make any substantial market inroads. So kind of the same as this guy. It's unfortunate. These are actually well made. They're fairly clever guns. No one wanted a Blowback 9mm. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Hopefully now, if you ever have a chance to spot one of these, you'll know exactly what it is. Thanks for watching.